So bear with me, I may talk fast, I may talk slow, I may fake a lot of it. I know it like the back of my hand because I lived and breathed this for 10 months, you guys. So pictured here is Lily Miroshnik. She is the mom of Abigail and Michaela, and I will go into a little bit more as to who they are, the nomenclature, what we named them, the color coding. It's all pretty phenomenal. Stop me at any point if you have any questions. I don't want to wait until the end because I'll forget. If you are seeking CEs for the AORN or for your CNOR, please make sure that you take an evaluation in one of the quizzes. There's pens back there. If you want to fill out the quizzes, we go along, that's okay as well. I'm all about, there's no such thing as cheating, just use each other's resources, okay? So, I'm the clinical nurse 3 at UC Davis Medical Center, and we'll start right here. So disclosures, there's no financial disclosures. KLS is not paying me, the AORN is not paying me. Dinner tonight is hosted by Brian and Matthew from KLS Martin. They were integrated, they were enrolled in our now we're gonna make him do a speech. I worked very closely with these two guys at UC Davis for a number of different reasons, and I love them because they just really, really support our pediatric operating room and craniofacial and a lot of other things. I know you guys are into a bunch of other stuff, but for us in Peds Neuro, they're critical in what we do with our PE patients. So contact hours, you're gonna get 1.2. I'm gonna try to go through it faster than 1 hour so that we can have time to answer any questions or anything that you guys want to think about. So objectives. You guys can read, I'm not gonna read them for you. I'm gonna tell you who I am. So I started at UC Davis Medical Center almost 29 years ago. I was the administrative executive assistant to the cardiac surgeons. And Dr. Follett at the time, for those of you at Mercy who still remember Dave Follett, said, "You're too smart for this, you should go to nursing school." Like, I didn't remember really well in nursing school, maybe med school. He's like, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't go to medical school. Go to nursing school, you guys have a better quality of life. You don't carry pagers, you don't have to answer to committees. Yes, we do. And I ended up going to nursing school. And when I graduated from nursing school, funny enough, I went to work in his ICU at UC Davis. So I was a CT-ICU nurse for 13 years before this little one had a massive tumor that needed resection, and I could no longer look at post-operative patients. I know. And at that point, I decided to cross-train into the operating room. At that time, we had a CN2 training program, which no longer exists, sadly, and I trained into the operating room. So I get into the OR and I ask Matthew Hipwell, our AN2, what do you need help in? What services need coverage? And at this point, the neuro service wasn't pediatric. There was a couple of surgeons that would do it, on a whim, but nobody was really fellowship trained in pediatrics. He says, I need to build a neuro team. We're hiring pediatric neurosurgeons. Dr. Bogan is bringing on board more specialties. They're looking at craniofacial with Dr. Senders. We need somebody that likes neuro. Well, who likes neuro? When I was in CTICU, that was the last ICU that I wanted to float to was MSICU. Those patients can masturbate themselves with their feet. So I said, fine, I'll do that. And he says, I said, what else? I can't just do neuro all the time. He says, I need somebody that does pediatric general and thoracic. I'm like, ooh, peds general, neuro, fine, we'll do it. They don't cross over anywhere else. There's a story to that though. They do cross over when it comes to fetal surgery. So I crossed into the operating room, took over pediatrics, neurosurgery, and pediatric general surgery, and that becomes a very interesting snowball. So a couple of facts about UC Davis Medical Center. You guys all know we're the big boys on the block. It's ugly. If you go there, you get lost in our hallways. We're running, at this point, we're the only level 1 adult and level 1 pediatric trauma center in Northern California. UCSF is level 1 adult, Lucille Packard is level 1 peds, but we're the only one in Northern California that carries both designations. A lot of people don't know it, but we carry actually 2 licenses. UC Davis Children's Hospital is a completely different entity than UC Davis Medical Center. That also becomes important later on. And we carry a 3rd license now, which is the rehabilitation center that we have. We have 646 beds. During COVID, that went as high as 900. People were in the basement and in empty shell spaces. Over 100 of those were critical care beds. Okay. Obviously, magnet certified, best hospital, Children's Hospital. What's really interesting is we have 49 level 4 NICU beds, and so we have a big neonatal population. And that also ties into our fetal surgery center because we follow those children from before they're born through their neonatal journey and sometimes into 3-4 years later because they tend to have a lot of sequela from their prematurity. In 2018, we moved to the new pediatric operating rooms. We have 6 operating rooms and 1 procedure room. We have what some people claim is the largest operating room on the West Coast. Operating room 4 was built for and designed for complex surgeries, and someday they anticipated the separation of conjoined twins. Everybody laughed. They said, "You're never gonna see it?" And I made that my target. I said, once I see and participate in a conjoined twin separation, that's my golden goose. I can retire. I still haven't retired, I'm almost there though. So they said, this operating room, you guys, is about 1,000 square feet. It's a little bit bigger than this room itself. And you'll see some pictures here where you're gonna find it very hard to find any space between people because there were so many of us in that operating room for that day. In 2006, the American College of Surgeons certified UC Davis Children's Hospital and the Children's Surgery Center as a level 1 pediatric children's surgery center. First in California, first on the West Coast. I believe there's a number of them now. I believe UCLA, USC have earned that distinction as well. All right, so little housekeeping. Pediatric patients are not just little humans. I hear that all the time from some of our adult colleagues, and they're not. There's a number of things that need to be considered when you're taking care of somebody that's under the age of 18. Pictured here is a code sheet. Many of you know what it is, some of you may not know. Everything into the pediatric land is weight-based. This is gonna become very important in this surgical case for 2 reasons. One, because everything needed to be accommodated and adjusted for the varying weights of the girls, even though they were conjoined. And the other one was because of the medications and the blood administration that happened during the case. Temperature is a big deal for little ones. The only time you'll ever find a cold operating room in the CSC is going to be when we're on surgical rest for pediatric hearts. Otherwise, we live sweating with coffee sweat, menopause, and lead at 78 degrees for the majority of our cases. So if they lose heat through their head, they can have clotting issues, they can have dysrhythmias, especially our neonatal population. They're at very high risk for intracranial hemorrhages. So we literally sweat our butt off. There's legal issues that happen with pediatrics. I can go to you and say, I'm gonna consent you for a right foot amputation, and that's great. Now we have pediatric patients, and there's so much that you have to take into consideration. Who's the legal guardian? Are you adopted? Do you have paperwork to support that? So the nurses in the CSC deal with this every day. Who are you? Why are you consenting for this child? We've had to call PD because parents that are separated haven't told the other parent that their child's coming in for a tonsillectomy. It's fun. Communication. We don't just have one patient, we have a family. We say that the family in its entirety is a patient. And we have to communicate with them and make sure that we've all delineated expectations that are reasonable. Because not all parents are. All right, so one of the questions on the quiz, what is craniopagus? It's a very fancy way of saying you're attached at the head, okay? Conjoined twins, 1 in 50,000 births worldwide. Conjoined twins at the cranium, which is your craniopagus twins, are 1 in every 1.6 to 2.5 million births. They're rare. And they're so extremely rare. A lot of countries tend to not discuss them. A lot of surgical centers that try to separate them don't discuss it because they've had very deleterious outcomes with 1 or 2 of the twins dying at the time of the separation. The classifications can get very complicated, so I just separated it into 2 groups. One is a partial fusion, and the second one is a complete fusion, or a total fusion. Here you're going to see a 3D modeling of our twins, Aida and Michaela, and then a couple of MRIs that we'll go into in a little bit more detail. Oh, sorry, can you see? I keep walking in front of you, I'm sorry. A couple of pictures. So partial, obviously, there's all kinds of manifestations where they can be attached. Your total craniopagus twins are not usually eligible for separation. They're sharing way too much blood vessels, way too much brain tissue, way too much bone, that separating them actually causes damage and death. So many of you guys might have seen the learning channels that had the 2 twins. carrying the twin around on a little cart when they were like in their 20s. They were a total fusion, so. All right, factors associated with successful separation. There really is no statistical difference. There's a lot of research out there in the medical journals from the physician's point of view on sinus drainage. For those of you that don't do neuro, I'll bore you to death with neuro stuff, but that was a big concern, was venous drainage on the twins. Some of the case literature that we reviewed, the surgeons have to decide which twin gets more of cerebral blood flow, and inevitably one of the twins ends up being severely developmentally delayed because they don't have enough brain or blood feeding their brain. I'm sorry. The two variables that did show statistical difference was if you try to separate them under the age of 1 year old, you have a higher rate of a positive outcome for both twins. And the other one was staging the separation. The stage separation, and I think it's interesting because pediatric neurosurgeons, there's only about 3,000 of them in the entire world, you guys. So they're a very small community. They all know each other. They all go to the same conferences. Dr. Goodrich at Montefiore in New York is credited with having developed the stage separation. And we'll talk a little bit more on how we staged our twins. But these are the two things that are statistically measurable and actually make a difference when you try to attempt to separate Craniopagus twins. The Paczynski twins were the 60th recorded attempt in history. Since then, I believe there's been 5 more, you guys, which we haven't had any in about 20 years until we tried the twins in 2020. And there's been, we helped a team from Ghana plan theirs. There's been a team in Brazil, a team in Italy, and then of course the Gemini Foundation in London. All right, so how did we get here? Real quick timeline, because this kind of sets the groundwork for where we went and where we are now. In 2011, the UC Davis Medical Center hired Diana Farmer. That name probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of you guys, but you want to talk about a boss. This woman is amazing. You can Google her, and her resume is just ridiculous. She's the first female fetal surgeon in the world. She's our chair of surgery. She happens to be a pediatric and fetal surgeon. So I tease her and I say, when she's operating, Dr. Hirosi's her boss, but when she's sitting as chair, then she's the boss. But this woman is the presence. So she hires Shin Hirosi from UCSF. She brings him over with him in 2014. He becomes the vice chair to her, and he becomes the program director for the Fetal Treatment Care Center. In 2016, we do our first open fetal myelomeningocele repair. For those of you that don't know what that entails, we externalize the uterus, we deliver the baby, we fix the defect, and we tuck it all back in and put mom on bed rest for about a couple of weeks. Okay. She is now, Dr. Farmer is now leading the first human trial of stem cells in that operation. And we're currently cleared by the FDA to do the next 20 patients. So phenomenal. We may possibly have the cure to spina bifida. In 2019, Dr. Michael Edwards comes back from Stanford. He was local here originally, working Sutter, working UCSF. He goes to Stanford and is hired back to start really beefing up the pediatric neurosurgery program. He becomes important because he knows Jim Goodrich, who was the father of the stage separation. He'd also been a surgeon for about 50 years by the time he hits us. He'll be 79 in September. He had participated in previous Craniopagus twin separations. Who knows when, because I couldn't find the records, but I will. He's a great storyteller if you ever get a chance to sit down with Mike. So later in 2019, in the summer, Lilia gets referred to the Fetal Care Treatment Center. And I just found this out recently, and I shared it with Chris, and I bet you that Francis didn't know it either. Lilia was referred to the Fetal Treatment Center for termination of pregnancy. Whoa. Yeah, I didn't know that. I just thought they referred her for potential monitoring and for these babies to be delivered alive. No, she was transferred to our Fetal Care Treatment Center for termination of pregnancy. And Dr. Hiroshi had the epiphany, let's MRI you with the babies in there, and let's see if you might possibly be looking at a viable pregnancy, number one, and number two, could they potentially be eligible for separation? Now, what's unique with Lily is they're local. When you look at previous separations, they've been brought in from other countries, from other states, but these guys live here. They're very, very fundamentally rooted in the Russian community, and they are actually local, and we get to follow the girls now. So she gets referred, the MRI says, hey, these girls are viable. They have independent brains. They've got a tiny little connection, but I think we can carry this pregnancy to term, which is big. If you understand, the Russian community does not believe in abortion.
Yeah.
But Tony did not want to lose Lilia in the process of trying to have these twins if that could be avoided. Why? Because they had 5 kids, all under the age of 10 at this point. January 2020, so the babies are born December 30th of 2019, and in January I have a discussion with Mike Edwards. I'd been offered a position over in the pavilion and on the adult side to be the lead for neuro and spine. And Dr. Edwards says, you can't go, I need help. If you don't help me do this, I have to transfer these kids to Stanford because I don't think we can do it here. So I agreed, I stayed. The rest is history, just kidding. So, the rest of it, I think we're gonna cover. Who remembers what happened right about here? Yeah, that's gonna play a big, big part in what happened with us. Alright, so January 2020. You guys, I kid you not, I thought I was just planning for a surgical case, and it morphed. I ended up becoming the primary contact for the family and every participating department in the hospital. When the girls needed cath lab, I was responsible for going to the cath lab and making sure everything was there. And when they needed an MRI, I was responsible for making sure the anesthesia was there. It morphed. It took on a very, very different face than what I had thought it was gonna do. But lo and behold, with an amazing support network, we were able to get everything planned and staged. This is just a screenshot of some of the timelines that we were building because everything had to be custom. So these were all custom trays. So I'll go into it in a little bit more here in a second. But yeah, these are just a couple of pictures, the girls the day they were born, and some of our plans. So changing role. Lily still texts me. She still texts Dr. Edwards if she needs anything with regards to facilitating movement within the medical center. Here you're going to see a couple of pictures. These are us transforming. I'm not an MRI nurse. Here we are. I'm ready to go to MRI. Here's the transport team. We literally look like a traveling circus every time that we did it. Right? Yeah. 2 ventilators. You had a team for everything, for each, an exact team for each girl. So we literally look like a traveling circus every time we just did it. So our twins, the gestational birth history. Like I said, they were born on the 30th. Lily had a spontaneous rupture of her membranes, and we C-sectioned her for the babies, to get the babies out. This is all kind of irrelevant except for this. This becomes a big deal. Lily is related to another very famous blogger, and these guys are very active on Instagram. So everybody's starting to get, an idea of what's going on at UC Davis Medical Center. This team of surgeons and nurses are offering this family this life-saving surgery. We're starting to feel some heat from other facilities. But one thing that was really cool was Dr. Goodrich found out about it. And I'll tell you guys a little bit more about that in a second here, because he becomes a casualty really soon. So, the nomenclature. This was developed in the NICU where they were born. It was very hard to track which team was dealing with which baby. And so they came up with this nomenclature. Baby A comes before B. Orange comes before purple in the alphabet. Abigail comes before Michaela in the alphabet. They went with orange and purple because even colorblind people can see the colors. And when I show you a video that we're gonna play here in a second, you'll understand why that makes such a big deal. On this side, what I want you guys to notice is their birth weights. Not too bad, right? 2.6 and 3, not too different. Wait till you see how much they weigh when we do the surgery. A couple of things that I want to mention on this slide is this guy right here, the neuronome. I believe it was week 2, I get pulled into an emergent meeting with Dr. Edwards and the NICU team. One of the girls goes into kidney failure and congestive heart failure. And the NICU team is appealing to us to take these babies emergently to the operating room and separate them now. And Dr. Edwards was like, no. This doesn't happen just now. This is gonna take months of coordination. You need to figure out how to stabilize these girls. We're going to keep planning, and we're gonna come back in April and June to do their stage separation. They should be steady by then. April and June 2020. Watch what happens. So here's a picture of the girls. This is an anterior view. Abigail on the right, Michaela on the left. Adorable. This is the posterior view. So you see where their connection is kind of funky?
Yeah.
It's not directly in the back, it's not directly outside, it's kind of in a weird position. To this day, Michaela still has a little bit of some palsy from where she was never able to rotate her neck. This is their first MRI about 3 weeks after birth. Next slide, I'm going to show you what becomes critical to us in the planning phases. Red dot. So they have separate brains, separate skulls, separate parenchyma, separate sinus drainage, which is critical because we know we won't have to sacrifice one of the girls so that the other one can live. They both have their own sinus drainage. What is highlighted here that isn't really super visible is they have a huge fistula that's transporting blood between the girls. Okay. This was an article that Edwin Kalubia, which was one of the residents for Dr. Edwards, had pulled up. And what they were saying is the advances in surgical planning were going to help us. This is going to be huge when we talk about what KLS was able to do for us when we did our bone reconstruction, and what Brain Lab was able to do for us when we did some brain mapping for the twins. So traditional and non-traditional resources. This is a question that's on the quiz as well. Literature search is easy. You go through, physicians are outstanding at publishing and keeping track of all of the things that they do. You know who's horrible at that? I found one article. Esther Coe wrote an article about 20 years ago about a set of Filipino twins that were brought to New York that Dr. Goodrich had separated. And she tracked all of her planning preoperatively, and she got to meet the twins 10 years afterwards. So, yeah. So what's interesting is Esther was retired by 2020. I can't find her. And the internet, and when I say internet and social media works, I found her on Facebook, you guys. And I messaged her on Messenger and I said, hey Esther, I'm Dr. Edwards nurse in California, and we've got a set of conjoined twins that I need some help. I don't know where to start. It's not your simple craniotomy. There's 2 babies, blah, blah, blah. And about 2 weeks later, she messages me back. And we get in touch, and she sends me all of her documentation, all of her papers, everything that she had tracked 20 years prior, she still had it. And yeah, so and she still texts me every once in a while, and she's just phenomenal. Cecilia Carney was Dr. or Mr. Jalili. Apparently in London, they're not called doctors or surgeons, they're called Sir or Mr. So Mr. Jalili in Great Ormond Street Hospital, he heads the Gemini Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps parents that have these kinds of children in these conditions. His nurse had retired. She calls me back. Somehow they find her and they give her my number, and she calls me back one morning at 2 o'clock in the morning and says, I will send you all of our reference cards. Subject matter experts, Dr. Goodrich. Dr. Goodrich called Dr. Edwards and says, hey, I hear our nurses are talking. I hear it's kind of rumbling through the internet and through Facebook and Instagram. Do you need my help? You know, Dr. Edwards is kind of a stuffy old bird. And he said, no, I don't need your help. We should have taken this help. Friday night, end of March 2020, I get a message saying Jim Goodrich was taken via ambulance. He's got COVID. He was in his early 70s. He's a little bit younger than Dr. Edwards. And he's not looking good. So Mondays are neuro day at Davis. I walk in and I say to Edwin, who happened to be the resident working the day, hey, did you hear Dr. Goodrich was hospitalized on Friday? He says, Aida, I'm sorry to tell you, he died yesterday. Oh. So Jim Goodrich was one of the first casualties in New York of COVID. Died without leaving any children or anybody. And so we're still trying to get through some of his paperwork and some of what he's published. So, but again, Mike had participated in some previous separations, so he was a great resource as well. Hospital resources. Whenever somebody offered, I took the help. There was just so many components, so many moving pieces that if they offered, we were willing to take the help. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you 2 short videos. These are phenomenal. Robert and Natalie made fun of me. The second one has about 19 million views on YouTube. And they claim that 18 million of them is new. But I think I share that with Chris. When I'm feeling really sad, I sit at home and I watch these. So let me know if the volume isn't loud enough. The first one is 3 minutes, and it's leading into the surgery, okay? Oh, please play.
Two babies with two heads conjoined will require one major surgery to make them separate.
So it's highly complicated from a healthcare point of view. It's highly complicated from an anesthesiology point of view.
Not all conjoined twins can be considered for separation. Abigail and Michaela can. The girls are joined by the skull, brain, soft tissues, veins, and blood vessels. Their surgery is scheduled to take place at UC Davis Children's Hospital on October 24th, when they're just shy of 10 months old. The surgical team
It's just sort of high in your head.
is clear-eyed about the huge amount of preparation to come. At UC Davis, that means turning to the best high-tech tools.
Pretty much all of the latest technology available, we've had an opportunity to try out and see how it can help us.
Neurosurgeons upload the twins' MRI and CT images into a system that creates a three-dimensional virtual model, allowing them to explore inside the baby's heads with the use of mixed reality goggles.
You can look from the top, the side, the bottom, you can rotate the 3D model. You can walk into the 3D model and backwards to see where you are.
Now they can understand the twins' unique anatomy from every possible angle. The view inside the goggles shows a complex network of blood vessels, which the team will need to detangle and separate.
With this clip, do you think we can get quite proximal, maybe a clip, 2 clips here eventually as a plan?
I think that's what I would do.
Yeah.
There are tangible models too.
Luckily, we exist in a time where there is this technology that we can take CT scan data and then generate it through the 3D printer, a 3D model of the baby skulls.
With these 3D models, the team can plan and practice the surgery.
Maybe we want to do like 75% of it.
In the operating room inside the UC Davis Children's Surgery Center,
There's custom parts all built in the hallway.
months of preparation culminate in a dry run or final rehearsal on October 23rd, the night before the surgery.
Baby orange is clothing, clothes covered sealed, prepare to go to fire.
The anesthesia team prepares for any sudden and dangerous complications, a very real possibility during a procedure as serious as this.
There can be significant blood loss, and that blood loss you can't really give to one child or the other. It can come from either, it can come from both.
1, 2, 3, and move.
The babies will need to change position and be turned over several times during the surgery, lifting them head over heels.
Any piece of equipment can get entangled, the bodies can get bruised, they can bang against the surface, so we are very careful about how we move patients. That's with one patient. Imagine 2 patients joined together.
The team practices these precise movements over and over. With more than 30 people in the OR, the team members are divided by color. The leaders, neurosurgeon Michael Edwards, plastic surgeon Granger Wong, anesthesiologist Raj Damrate, and nursing lead Aida Benitez don black caps. Not just any black caps.
We were the guardians of the babies, so we used Guardians of the Galaxy hats.
The team in purple will take care of Michaela, while Team Orange cares for Abigail. Purple and orange masking tape label the equipment for the two teams in the operating room.
It is choreographed much as in a ballet so that everybody knows their role at a given time, and we've undergone rehearsals now for months preparing for this case.
Damrate and Benitez have led the OR team through the months-long planning process. They will serve as co-captains in the operating room.
Essentially, my job was done. I had gotten everybody to that finish line, and all they needed to do was walk past it.
It's now hours before the surgery. The babies have breathing tubes inserted, and their mother Lilia says a tearful goodbye. The big day is finally upon them.
We're gonna watch part 4. Part 4 is about 6 minutes long. It's gonna really showcase the 28 hours in there. Did you say 20 or 28? 28.
Saturday, October 24th, 2020, surgery day join twins Abigail and Michaela at UC Davis Children's Hospital. Connected at the head for their first 9 months of life, they will finally become two fully separate babies.
It's one of those cases that captures the imagination.
After months of careful preparation, including practice with high-tech tools, rehearsals become reality for members of the surgical team, more than 30 of them. In the operating room that was custom built for this level of surgical complexity, hang detailed plans and timelines, and a portrait that reminds everyone what's at stake.
These are our babies. There's a family on the other side that's praying for these little girls, and we can't lose focus of that no matter what happens.
The babies had breathing tubes inserted the night before, so the team is ready to begin its long list of procedures from the moment their tiny patients entered the operating room at 7:53 a.m. They know they are in for a marathon. The entire event could take 24 to 48 hours.
You're going to move sideways and move the vents out the way sideways.
Pediatric anesthesiologist Raj Damrit leads the team that will monitor the twins' vital life functions and maintain their safety. The twins' shared anatomy complicates the anesthesia.
The two children were connected somehow, but we really didn't understand how one child would affect the other child. So there was all this balancing that was happening, and that was continuous.
1, 2, 3, and
During the surgery, the twins have to be turned over several times, a precarious move.
pull the legs out.
They will be turned over a total of 5 times throughout the procedure.
Let the surgeon lift the leg ahead.
Nursing lead Aida Benitez steps out to give the twins' family an update.
So they're doing I'm giving you a good report card on this, okay?
Back in the OR, the team readies for its next steps. Plastic surgeon Granger Wong inserted a tissue expander under the girl's scalps 3 months prior. Now he makes the initial incisions and removes it. The custom-made expander encouraged the growth of new skin, enough to cover the girls' heads after separation.
Well, I've got an anatomy based on where that situation is.
The neurosurgery team, led by pediatric neurosurgeon Michael Edwards, reviews their plan one more time, referring to a custom-printed 3D model of the baby's skulls. With the tissue expander removed, for the neurosurgeons, the painstaking and meticulous task of dividing veins and brains begins. They know the most challenging part will be the fistula ligation. That's clipping and dividing a large connection shared between the babies. Hours pass, and then the neurosurgery team makes an unwelcome discovery when they reach the critical step of cutting the fistula. Their preparation had led them to believe that abnormal connection would be plainly visible.
Everybody said, oh, we open up, you'll see it. Well, when we got to it, we couldn't see it. It wasn't there.
The connection is covered by a tough membrane called the dura, and it can't be seen. Under pressure, they have to make a decision.
Okay, do we cut into the dura and try to open it knowing that there's a big blood vessel moving a lot of blood? Or what do we do to try to coagulate and control the fistula? So we finally said, okay, we got up and do this.
They go in cautious and exacting. The wrong move could lead to a massive brain bleed, even bleeding to death. After tense moments, the cutting of the fistula is a success. Benitez calls the twins' mother.
I asked her, are you still out front on the lawn? I went outside and actually delivered the news in person.
Outside the hospital, the baby's mother Lilia holds vigil, waiting in the company of supportive family and friends.
We're just waiting for the great news, which is coming from the operating room, and just praying.
Okay, reach in and pull the legs out.
The work continues. The babies are lifted up and over again. Blood transfusions are needed. Then, after 3 a.m., 20 hours into the procedure, and nearly 10 months into Abigail and Michaela's lives,
Cranial separation. Yay!
for the first time, there is space between them. This moment is for Benitez to declare for the record.
I looked over and they had tears in their eyes, and I looked to my right and they had tears in their eyes, and I finally choked it out. It's 3:28.
1, 2, 3, move.
It's the first time in their lives Abigail and Michaela are lying on separate beds. Dr. Wong returns to reconstruct the twins' skulls and close the incisions.
We're glad we were able to accomplish our goal, but we're tired.
7:49 a.m., almost exactly 24 hours from when they entered the OR in one bed, the twins leave in 2. For the team, a swelling of relief, pride, and congratulations.
It's a Herculean effort that we've all contributed to. I think everybody will be telling the story of these last 25 hours to everyone for the rest of their lives.
Mom is beside herself. I actually thought she disconnected when I called to tell her that she had 2 little girls at 328 in separate beds. She couldn't talk. And then she just broke down.
The twins will have a long recovery here in the UC Davis Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, or PICU. A new day, a new life, as twins no longer conjoined.
When we rolled into the PICU, the sun was starting to peek out over the buildings, and to me they just looked like angels. The sun hit their forehead, and I realized this is the handoff. Our job here is done.
Surgery. This becomes important to us, especially to Chris and I, because Dr. Edwards at the last minute decides he might want to use brain lab and navigation. Last minute. To me, 3 weeks into a 10-month planning process was last minute. And so he says, hey, we're going to anesthetize the girls and take them down to MRI, do a final scan, and then we're going to bring them up to the operating room, because I brought up the question, is anybody here familiar with brain lab and the way the navigation systems work? So they were going to do EM. They weren't going to do optical, because we knew we couldn't pin them to do the reverse and back and forth on the positioning. So we knew we were going to use electromagnetics, and these boxes sit on the side of your head. So if I'm going in for brain tumor, this box that looks kind of like a Roku sits on the side of your head. And I asked him, do you know if that's going to go all the way through 2 sides of one skull into the other skull? Is this method or this technology even going to work for you? Because you have a good point. Let's take the brain lab computer and all of the equipment up to the PICU. We'll keep the girls intubated, and let's check and see if we can get that stuff, the brain lab registration. And Chris and I had the epiphany, whoa. We'd already discussed with our wound care team, hey, what is the best positioning for these girls during surgery? What's the best way to reduce our risk for pressure ulcer reduction? And they said, why don't we pressure map them? So hey, Dr. Edwards, if you're already doing all your silly stuff, can we cut in with the wound care team and do some pressure mapping to see where our biggest points of impact are with the girls? So we were able to do pressure mapping on the girls and to develop a plan for treatment in the operating room. So the MRI turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And yes, brain lab did register, much to the chagrin of all the nurses because we need it. So 3D modeling, Ryan and KLS. We do the scans. These guys pop it into a computer and it spits out these beautiful images for us. They also drop into that navigation system where you can kind of come in and out of the models. These are some of the models that Ryan and KLS actually have in paper. We actually still have also the 3D printed ones. I got to pick one as well. All right, so the surgical outline, the positioning. This is just going to tell you what all those pretty pictures that Natalie wrote and put up on the wall, kind of when we were going to go through, and this is the very technical version of it. We'll go through it in a little bit here. So prone position number 2. Our big thing was trying to figure out, and I hadn't thought about this at the beginning, like I said, this just morphed into something that we wouldn't have thought. We needed to determine where was the weak point in the bony connection. If you separate the front, is there a weak point on the back where it can snap when you're repositioning the costocal or supine? So that was a consideration that needed to be made. We did find out that there was more thickness at the base of their connection than there was in the front. So we opted to separate from the front first after they were able to get the tissue expanders out, and then prone them to that part where they had more bony features and where it's a little bit more stable. Okay? As the video said, you guys, we got there and it was just like a big deflation. We don't know where this thing is. The navigation system is saying it's there, we can't see it. He's not kidding when he said, we just gotta get gut up and do this. We were prepared with vascular clips. We were prepared with so many different things and technology that we brought in, and I just went across it with a balanced bipolar. And I think you could have heard a mouse fart in the corner when that happened too. We're just going for it. Yeah, we're just gonna go for it. We did it. Okay, that's just one gut up. I never heard that reference until Mike said it. All right. Here's a closer view of a fistula, you guys. I don't know, use this pointer. It's right here. Pointer's gonna work. Okay, so right here. It looks big on the screen. It looked big on the microscope when we saw it. It looked big when you look down the craniotomy hole. Okay, that too. Here's where I can pitch a little bit of what KLS does for us. So if you go in as an adult for a craniotomy, any kind of accidental trauma to your head, we're gonna titanium plate you because as adults we no longer have osteoblasts in our system. About under the age of 8, little ones still have osteoblasts, and they send those osteoblasts to your bones wherever you're fractured or wherever we're creating our craniotomy site. Where kids are amazing is these plates that we use are absorbable. So the babies and any other kiddos under the age of about 8 send osteoblasts, and they will build bone, and these plates disappear, and then you just have nothing. You just have natural bone made by the child. And so that was one of the products that we used in closing. Our risks. So these were some of the things that we were really concerned about, and there was a lot, but these were the real big ones, right? So sinus injury or hemorrhage, especially with that fistula just glaring at us once we did finally get in there. Air embolism was another big one. Again, if you don't do neuro, it's a big consideration anytime we enter somebody's brain. If you get air in that head, you've got seconds, and there really isn't an effective way to evacuate it other than drop that head and flood the field. And even then, if you get one, you're probably gonna get out of it with some kind of deleterious outcome. Acute sinus thrombosis, a stroke. And we'd seen that in the literature with some of the other twins that had to have sinuses separated, they clot, they throw out half of or a quarter of their brain. One's in wheelchair, the other one's running around just fine. So these were some of the major things that we were really keeping an eye on during the case. So my team. Boy, did I make some friends, and boy, did I make some enemies. I remember I told you guys, we didn't have a big neuro team when I started in the operating room 9 years ago. So, pictured here, you'll see some of my friends that were on the team. Christine and Francis are here. They're some members of the purple team. In this picture, between Chris, Andrew, and I, you're talking about 100 years of nursing experience between the 3 of us. My 5 scrub nurses, 11 combined. So I got a lot of criticism for that. They said, why didn't you pick the most senior staff in the department? And I'll tell you why. They had all trained with me. Dr. Zweinenberg was the pediatric neurosurgeon at the time that I joined the CSC. She trained me. I turned around and trained them all. We all did everything the same. We all got along well. It was, if we're gonna be stuck in an operating room for up to 48 hours, we have to be able to like each other. And we have to be comfortable speaking up when something isn't right. So I received a lot of criticism for that. And tail end, Dr. Edwards said, you do what you think we need to do. I trust you wholeheartedly. And my circulators were my backbone. There was times when I cried on their shoulders because just things weren't going well or management wasn't understanding what we were trying to accomplish. But without this group of people, it would have never happened, you guys. Our equipment specialists, our anesthesia techs, and our operating room assistants. These teams stayed for 28 hours. Dr. Damright said 25, of course, because the surgery starts when they get there, right? When the anesthesia starts when they get there. But we were there 3 hours before, and we were there 3 hours later cleaning up because Monday morning, we have more surgery to do. Of note, 4 of the people on this have now promoted to CN3s through the career ladder process, by the way, since this picture was taken. So the training and the dry runs. You guys, one of the good things, and I think I covered this later in a slide about COVID hitting us, is we shut down the operating rooms at Davis. I don't know if you guys did at your facilities, but we were down to 1 to 2 operating rooms, and it was urgent emergent cases only. So it gave us the opportunity to do all these dry runs. We got out early today. Let's set up room 4 and see what it's gonna look like. One of the problems that we had was getting some of the surgeons there. So the nurses practiced, and we would say like, hey, how big are the girls now? We had to go through several mannequins and dolls, and you saw how they were duct taped in the video. And the plastic surgery resident was the one that duct taped them in exactly the same position that the twins were. And we realized, like, why are we still playing with the infant models when the girls are gonna be 10 months? So we had to upsize, and Amazon, I'm sure, thought our purchases were a little funny when we started buying 5-size babies. They still sit in one of the equipment rooms at the hospital. They're down in the collaboration room. So one of the things One of the pictures that I showcase here, this one right here, this is gonna look funny to a lot of people. That's a striptease that we have to cut into 4. And I say this, it's important, because with all those position changes, we have draping changes. Now, do you think we went through 5 drills? No, we had somebody like holding cables so that we wouldn't contaminate the Mayo or any of the instruments that are on there. And then we would guide them back on when we repositioned and redraped. It was beautiful. These guys did an amazing job. We finally got a contamination at 4 a.m. and it was one of the residents leaning on the microscope. Let's see. Supply carts. With all of the supply issues that we had during COVID, we had to start hoarding supplies. We weren't getting our gloves, we weren't getting our gowns, and when we were, Chris and I were hiding them in tubs and sticking them in our assistant nurse manager's office. And we started creating custom carts based on lists that the scrub nurses had said, I think we're gonna need this, and we started collecting half-by-3 cottonoids. I wish I had put a picture up here for you guys to see what our cottonoids look like by the end. I think we ended up using about 200 cottonoids and the whole count was pretty insane. So barriers and challenges. I'm gonna step back because I might actually need to follow this slide. I'll tell you the biggest barrier was, you guys, I'm a clinical nurse. I'm not an educator. So I was planning all of this while I was still doing neurosurgery with all the neurosurgeons. So I was sneaking away in between breaks, trying to talk to PICU, trying to talk to cardiology, trying to get everybody. So that was a big barrier. I didn't have time. The final 3 weeks, Matthew didn't leave me out of the count just to make sure that everything was dialed in and that we were ready to go. But that wasn't the case for the 9 months leading up to it. The funding was huge. So that OR, as I mentioned, was designed for the separation of conjoined twins. Our manager says, we realized once that Dr. Edwards said that he wanted to keep both of the twins in the same room for reconstruction. We don't have enough operating room lights. Can we rent one? No. You have to get it donated, is what they said. Like, wait, we're spending all these millions of dollars and you can't rent us a $600 light. So getting the commitment of the organization at the beginning, in hindsight, should have been a big move of mine. So operating room 4, there it is in all its glory. The impact of COVID, implants. The manufacturing facility that was gonna make the implant for us for the tissue expander shut down during COVID. So where the girls were supposed to get their surgery in April and June, they were readmitted in June for tissue expander placement. So this is a big deal. I don't think we talk about it enough as nurses, but I was really concerned for the emotional well-being, not only of myself, but of all the team. We got a lot of support. My little sister happens to be a clinical licensed social worker for the Air Force, and she debriefs a lot of the soldiers that come back, and she gave us a lot of coping mechanism and tools and skills on how we needed to react to our body telling us, you're excited because, well, this is happening. So we got a lot of support also from pastoral services, Support You, all of the feel-good departments in the hospital that I don't think we reach out to enough. And of course, our family, right? He would wake up at 2 o'clock when I was waking up writing notes on a napkin or whatever I happened to have on the nightstand. And then I realized, like, my phone is on there. Like, why am I not taking notes on my phone? These thoughts would come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you guys. It'd be like, oh my God, we forgot to do blah, blah. I lost a lot of sleep. We did do care packages and essential oils. Somebody put them together for us and we used them in the PACU. Our manager had an allergic reaction to one of them. And she didn't come back for the rest of the case. And the care package was, hey, did anybody remember to bring Tums, Tylenol, mints, toothbrushes? I came into work with a big bag of all that stuff. So the stages of surgery, I'll gloss through this really quick. Stage 1, we put the tissue expanders in. It was tricky. They were supposed to be readmitted to go to the cath lab to have a PDA closure. One of the girls got sick while they were there, and we had to delay the tissue placement, the tissue expander placement for a week. And so we go to the cath lab, they do the PDA, and the whole circus transports to the operating room. So we help the OR and the entire team there. Tissue expander goes in. No big deal, except that we did notice that in the positioning, we crushed one of the girl's ears. And that became an issue, and that's one of the reasons why we approached the wound care team for the big surgery. Scan day, we already discussed. This is us doing pressure mapping up in the PICU. And then the cranial separation surgery. It was a weekend case. I asked Dr. Edwards, are you willing to do this on a Saturday? Well, why do you want to do it on Saturday? So because there's way too much traffic here, there's way too many people here, and we need to be able to control the access to these rooms. And management agreed, we shut down the operating room on Friday night, did our dry run, and we showed back up Saturday and we were ready to go. We forgot to let plant operations and maintenance know that we were there. We didn't realize that the air conditioning cycles off during the weekends. We forgot to let the fire department know that we were there, so when somebody took a shower at 2 a.m. and the steam started coming out of the bottom of the bathroom, the fire department showed up ready to knock down the door. That was Chris, by the way, Chris couldn't touch that.
Thank you for Andrew.
Yeah, the circulator caught the fire department getting ready to knock the door down. He's like, there's somebody's in there taking the shower. Some of the things we forgot, right? And then the live stream and guest list. We were streaming down to one of our conference rooms on the second floor, and it was very much a monitored list, not just anybody could walk in. That's a good story too. Some of our staffing algorithms. We literally went to Chicago Fire on a Saturday afternoon, and Dr. Edwards and Chris and I paid for everybody to eat and just talk offline without managers watching us. And this is what they came up with. This is them, not me. I just put it in a pretty graph. They chose when to break, who was gonna break them, and the algorithm that in that moment, if you weren't primary scrub, what is your job in the event of a code? So that's what the document on the right says, who's primary responsible for A. So this was them, not me. It's just brilliant. It's just planned down almost to a minute. So special accommodations, again, the packing was so cute. They put all the fancy music on all the little TVs, and they decorated all the gurneys so that nurses can sleep. Who slept? Did any of you sleep? Nobody slept. No. I think somebody laid down because they had a migraine, but it was an anesthesiologist. The nurses couldn't rest. We'd take a shower and we'd jump right back in. They fed us. We turned the procedure room, we have a very famous executive chef at Davis, Santana, and he catered and fed us for 24 hours. Security needed to know that we were there. Security needed to know that mom was out on the front lawn to keep her off, right? This is COVID, she can't come into the facility with all of her, with her entourage, that's why they were out on the front lawn. And sterile processing and materials management. Because we can't do it without the people in the basement, right? So they went on 24 hours with dedicated staff just to us, so that if we ran out of something, we would have it. Dry runs. You guys can read this. This was the big one, the social dilemma. Management was really tight on who had access and who knew what we were doing. So they were monitoring people coming in and out of the conference room where we were streaming. And I got a text message the following morning saying, hey, did you guys know that you guys are all over Instagram? This actual surgery. And I said, what do you mean? And I go on Instagram, and sure enough, I'm tagged on it, and they have recorded me while I was giving them the news of the fistula, which I was fine with, it's not a big deal. What really bummed us was they didn't shut the blinds on the windows, and the family was downstairs recording the moves from the microscope. Oh. And they put it on their Instagram. No comment. We weren't the ones that got tripped up. Management now has frosted windows on those conference rooms. So some of the support services, you guys, this is a big list, but this isn't even all encompassing, right? And just check this out. It's pretty much everybody in the mother, right? And so the media blitz. I don't think any of us were prepared for what came afterwards once we knew that they were safe. People magazine, the news. We were getting comments and phone calls from family members in different countries saying, hey, we saw you on the news here. And so that was kind of something that none of us were expecting. I mean, it's kind of nice, your 15 minutes of fame, but yeah, it was really stressful, especially in light of the problem with Instagram, which we weren't responsible for. So recommendations to anybody who's taking on this kind of cases. And this isn't just for if you're gonna separate conjoined twins, right? This is like when you're doing those massive kidney transplants where you have a bunch of donors and that kind of stuff, or you're doing some crazy flat case or a laryngeal transplant. These are things to consider. It really shouldn't be a clinical nurse. Maybe use the clinical nurse to help guide your process and ask those clinical questions, but you need somebody that's out of the count that can dedicate all of their effort to do this. These are the people that were actually involved, critical. So you'll see that it isn't necessarily all of the nurses that were in the operating room. We had a lot of AN1 support and support from other educators and things. There's the team. I think about, 25% of people had left. Dr. Edwards disappeared on us after we took patients to the PICU. We were all looking for him for debrief. Nobody could find him. He was asleep at home. So he's not pictured in this picture. And in December of 2021, the team received the Daisy Team Award from hospital administration. These are the girls now. A couple of interesting facts, I put that in there so I won't forget. This is them in January. We get invited to the birthday party every year. Again, like I said, I love that they're local. We see them very frequently. A couple of interesting facts. In retrospect, one was parasitic twins. When we go to surgery, Mika weighed 7 kilograms and Abigail weighed 10. Now remember when we back up and I said that one of them went into heart failure and kidney failure? It was the little one. Mika was only given a 10% chance of survival of the surgery. She was the first one extubated. She was the first one to lose her feeding tube. She was the first one to walk, the first one to talk. As it turns out, Abigail was a parasitic or a twin-to-twin transfusion twin. And she's had a much harder time at recovering because her little baby sister isn't doing all the hard work for her anymore. In retrospect, I don't know if nobody figured that out before. Yeah, so 3 kilo difference when we went to surgery, you guys. That was huge for us when we were trying to pull over 20 kilos intubated with central lines and A lines and a head that was taped together anytime that we did a pinch and change. So some special acknowledgements, just thank you to a bunch of people that really helped with the project. Big support from these leaders who are no longer here. UCSF has them, and Kaiser, I believe Flipping Marshall's at Kaiser now. We miss him. If you would like, I will show you guys the references at the end. This middle barcode will take you to all 6 of the videos that Public Affairs did for us. I think in total it's about 30-35 minutes. It follows the girls from the day of birth through when they go home. And they're little videos just like the ones you watch here, 3 to 5 minutes long. The barcode on the right is actually a link to Lilia's Instagram. If you want to see little girls running around being your average little 4 or 5-year-olds, it's wonderful. Most of us follow them. I think she's got 100,000 followers on Instagram now. And she would love more followers. Does anybody have questions? And yes, it was, I think I was there 29 hours, you were there 28. We never went home. 2 weeks prior to surgery, our manager dropped on us that she wanted us to work in 12-hour shifts. 2 weeks prior. And I said, fine, you pick which nurses come in on days, you pick which nurses come in on nights, and you're responsible for telling Dr. Edwards. She said, what? Then I said, you have to tell Dr. Edwards. She said, well, let me think about it. And of course, I'm the tattletale, I wrote to Dr. Edwards, and I said, listen to what they want us to do. He says, absolutely not. We don't know when the moment of separation is gonna happen, and when it does, I need all 8 of you on deck and ready to go, because the teams are separating, and each baby needs a whole team, and I need you to be there to make sure that everybody's doing their job. Number 2, I don't want them getting in a car accident on the way back in, because we are relying on every single one of these nurses. So we got to be there for the full 24 hours. Okay. Questions, comments? Go ahead.
Were your counts correct?
Yes. I have a picture of it somewhere. The counts were insane. I think we were upwards of 200 cottonoids on the field. And I think needles wasn't that bad, you guys. Needles were not that bad. I'm gonna look for it and I'll send it out to you guys as an attachment. Because it's pretty impressive count.
Did you stay awake or did you go to your house?
We stayed awake.
On your break?
Only one person actually fell asleep, and she's not pictured in there. Poor Olga was the last one to go. So at 2 a.m., she goes to break. She had just laid down and started falling asleep, and they separate at 3:28. So we have to get her back home. And she walked in all bedhead, rattled. Nobody slept. I got home, and my assistant manager had given me this little tequila bottle, and I took a shot. And then I couldn't go to sleep. You're just like, your mind was just going, what did I forget to do? What didn't we chart? Are they okay? And then I went back to work on Monday and did a spine, I think. Yeah, I don't think anybody slept. Any other shower? We did shower. Yeah, some of us were a little hotter temperature than others. Any other questions? Thank you, you guys. I am gonna look for the picture of that count board because it was pretty amazing. And the count boards are still there. We had to make so many modifications to this operating room to make it happen. But the girls are doing amazing. It's been an amazing experience.